I want to say something really quick right here. We always get with Jeff Osborne to talk about the episode before the episode. He was really too busy, and I got lucky. Guys, this is the reason I had Jeff send me that box of cassettes. There was no guarantee that we would even be able to transfer them. As if you've listened to the first 10 episodes, the quality's that's not real good. But I want to say this episode, the quality is super. And it is the episode that I wanted. Episode 32. Jerry Lawler does a shoot interview on me. So I titled the episode, Brian Tramel is a fat piece of shit. He also talks about Dave Meltzer. This is a really fun episode, and we're going to talk about this on a new episode next week, a WTF at halftime. I'm going to let you listen. Jeff talks about it on what he calls the second side, which will be after the commercial break. And I believe he talks about it again at the end. Thanks, guys. Enjoy it. Have fun with it. That's what I did. I'm having fun with it after all these years.
Welcome again, wrestling fans, to a very special issue number 32 of Cassette Wrestling News, featuring such stars as the Jersey Devil, Big Mouth Vince DePalma, and a special one-on-one Cassette Wrestling News interview with Jerry the King Lawler. We'll be discussing cable television, Brian Tramel and David Meltzer. A blast from the past. Information on the next imaginary paper, listen card of Cassette Wrestling News, plus the truth on the death of Bruiser Brody. All this and much, much more in this action-packed hour of CWN. So as the story goes, sit back in your ringside seat and we'll bring the action to you.
Hello, listeners. This is John Seaton.
And this is Jeff Osborne.
All right, Jeff, let's get right into the nitty-gritty of the thing. Let's talk about the death of Bruiser Brody.
All right, John, now I was supposedly supposed to interview Dutch Mantell a couple of months back, but I never thought to ask him because he was there in Puerto Rico when Bruiser Brody was murdered. Now, you know more about this than I do. I was never really in tune to what was going on with the death of Bruiser Brody. All I know is that the sport is minus one less grappler, and a legendary grappler he was.
Yeah, Bruiser Brody set the standards for others to follow by. He was the ultimate brawler. Plus, he was a fine ring technician and one of the top stars in the States, and particularly in Japan, where he was practically worshipped. He was called the intelligent monster in Japan. Well, mentioning Dutch Mantell was in the dressing room when Bruiser Brody was murdered, underlined murdered, Jeff. Dutch Mantell left the dressing room prior to the stabbing. He went out to check on the crowd, or to see a match that was occurring. But a man who did see the incident was Tony Atlas. This happened in Bayamon, Puerto Rico, and it was at the Bayamon Stadium. And Jose Gonzalez, who was at the time one of the top faces, he wrestled as the Invader, which is the only really highest ring status he ever achieved, was one of the Invaders. Anyway, he asked Bruiser Brody to follow him into the dressing room shower stalls, where, as Brody followed him into the dressing room shower stalls, he was murdered. He was stabbed in the chest, I believe 4 times in the abdomen, and he died the next morning. One man who saw it was Tony Atlas, and Tony Atlas was supposed to testify, but because of the fact that Tony Atlas did not testify, Jose Gonzalez is a free man, Jeff.
I understand that there were threats to Tony Atlas's family in this. Nothing. I was not aware of this, John. I just thought he didn't go to the trial just because he didn't want to, but he saw the whole thing, and he or did he not admit that Brody was murdered?
Yes, he admitted to Bill Apter of Pro Wrestling Illustrated fame that indeed he did see the entire incident, and Brody was, in Atlas's own word, Brody never suspected a thing. The knife was moving all the time, and it was just cold-blooded murder. Those were exact quotes from Tony Atlas. He was subpoenaed to appear at the trial, but I guess discretion is the better part of valor, and he fled Puerto Rico, probably due to the fact that he received death threats to himself and his family. and whatnot, and he didn't back. He backed out of the thing, and it's really a shame because now Jose Gonzalez has been acquitted, and he's looked upon as a hero. The fans there think that Bruiser Brody was a wild man, that Jose was acting in self-defense, which is totally not the case. There were several other wrestlers in the dressing room at the time, like the Young Bloods and Dutch Mantell and Carlos Colon, but they did not see it. Atlas was a key witness, and he was the only thing that could have prosecuted. He was the only thing that could have led to the prosecution of Jose Gonzalez as a murderer. But like I said, he took the easy road out. He gave in to the pressure and from the death threats, and he fled Puerto Rico. And because of this, Jose Gonzalez is a free man. Damn it, Jeff.
Now I understand that is Gonzalez a stockholder in the WWC, and I understand he was a stockholder along with Carlos Colon and a number of others. Is this? I don't know anything about this.
That's true. That's true, Jeff. Jose Gonzalez helped build the Puerto Rican wrestling scene along with Carlos Colon and Victor Jovica. These men were all friends. They're like blood brothers. They wrestled together and known each other for years and years and years. I think Carlos and Victor Jovica, who were in the dressing room at the time, they testified that they thought it was self-defense, in which case it was not. Bruiser Brody was stabbed. He was murdered. And he had no idea what was going on. He was just plain outright stabbed. It's murder in my book, and it should be in yours too. And I think Jose Gonzalez got away with murder, damn it.
You said you wanted to ask Dutch Mantell what exactly he saw, but Dutch is in the NWA now. I believe Dutch was the person that Brody told, tell my wife and tell my son that I love him. I think, was this true, John?
Yes, these were his last words before he lost consciousness, and he was taken to the hospital where he died the following morning. Frank Goodish was one of the greatest wrestlers ever to come down a pike. He's in my top 20 wrestlers of not only this generation, but of all time, Jeff. He was truly great. He was legendary in the ring circle, and anybody who loves wrestling loved Bruiser Brody, and it's a shame that a little pissant wrestler like Jose Gonzalez is getting away with murder of a great... I don't understand the motive. Maybe there was something going on between them. I don't know. Drugs could be involved, but you never know. It's just inside stuff. You can only speculate.
All right. With our condolences to the family of Bruiser Brody, and we're missing a bright, shining star, John.
That's right. The people in Japan, they commemorate his death by they had a memorial in the ring. Giant Baba presented this, and everybody in the stadium bowed their heads in a moment of silence, and it was truly a tribute to a great wrestler and a good man.
All right. John, let's go to, not necessarily a lighter subject, but one that needs to be brought to the attention of not only the wrestlers, but, the promoters. Now, I'd like to thank Vince De Palma for sending me a tape of John Anthony's Wrestling Spotlight. That's 1440 AM in Babylon, New York. Now, on this particular show that Vinny sent me, Billy Graham was on this show talking about the dangers and the evils of steroids. Now, I couldn't believe this, John. He says 90 to 95% of all wrestlers use steroids. This is a phenomenal number. I never thought that. I don't know.
Well, Jeff, I would say the number's up in that high percentage. I'd say closer to 75 to 80% of wrestlers use steroids. There are men like Dutch Mantell and Jerry Lawler and wrestlers of this nature, Rick Morton, Robert Gibson, Bobby Eaton, men who never use steroids. They're just naturally gifted athletes, and they don't need it. But then you have the men, the new age wrestlers, I call them, the men like Sting, the men like the Road Warriors, the Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan, men like this, who personify wrestling power but with little technique or skill. These are the men that are ruining wrestling. True, they have charisma, but do they have the skills necessary? No, I don't think so. You look at a man like Ric Flair. I think Ric Flair does take steroids, but I think he only does it to keep up with these younger lions who are coming into the sport so he can compete on a level with them like Lex Luger. So, it's either you take it and be successful, or you don't take it and you kind of flounder around.
John, that's one reason that, you or I cannot get in the wrestling business, because I don't want to take steroids. I know you don't want to take steroids. I know you've seen some of the steroids. You have some at home, but Those things are about the size of baseballs, and I couldn't stand swallowing those things every day or injecting them or anything like that, and to suffer the consequences. Recently Hawk's heart rate was beyond belief, and he couldn't participate on the Meadowlands card. And you know what this was from, John?
I believe from steroid usage, it affects your heart rate dramatically. Road Warrior Hawk is suffering from this, and if the man's smart, and I believe Road Warrior Hawk is smart, he'll realize that his health is more important than just being big and being able to, be successful in the wrestling business. Your health's the number one thing. Don't forget that.
But let me point out something that Superstar Billy Graham said. He said once you start on steroids, you're hooked on them for life, and there's no way to get off of them unless some life-threatening ailment attacks you, such as the bone disease that Superstar Billy Graham has. Now, I feel sorry for the wrestlers because I know that they say, well, look how big I'm getting. I'm just going to take that much more. And it has to be addictive. And Billy Graham says they'll never come off of it unless they see what happens. And
it's true. It's interesting to note that it may be addictive in physical form, but once you start taking them, you will start noticing gains in muscle and strength, and then you just keep on getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's hard to stop. It's a vanity thing, Jeff. Like you say, you and I could have access to steroids. I lift weights on and off. I've been lifting weights on and off for the past 10 years, and the biggest I've ever gotten is 190 pounds, and that's without steroids. So how do you think these men get as big as they do? Without chemical help? Give me a break.
Now I recently watched a show on ESPN about weightlifting, and a guy on there says, your body can only get so big until you have to start using extracurricular means of strength. And he says that most people you do see in sports, and it's an upcoming thing here. It's on the rise. Steroid abuse is definitely a no-no if you want to live past the age of 50.
Well, like I say, Billy Graham's 46 years old. You look at him, you swear he's in his 60s. That is a testimony, plus the fact that he's crippled. Wrestling is not the only sport that we're picking on as far as steroid usage. Bodybuilders take them. Football players take them. It's prevalent in every major sport where strength is involved and size is needed. And that's the bottom line, and I feel sorry for the athletes. Sure, you're enjoying the success now, the Lex Lugers, the Stings, the Ultimate Warriors. But when you're older and when you retire, you're going to be screwed up, buddy boy.
All right, that's our opinion of steroids. Say no to steroids. All right, John, let's talk about some topics here. I had a lot of comments. We've got nothing but thumbs up on the Dream Wars, John. And
that's surprising, Jeff.
I know. Me and John didn't like it. We thought the production level was sort of low. But listen to this. I promise you, we're going to have a Dream card during the summer.
We have yet to name it, however.
Yes, if you got a name for the Dream card, something original, let us know and send us in your matches. I know we've signed 2 or 3 matches already. Blanchard will take on Arn Anderson, and Sting and the Ultimate Warrior are going against the Road Warriors. That's the only 2 matches we know right now. So if you have any suggestions, drop them to us, and it's going to be our next Dream card, and we promise it's going to be 100 times better.
That's right. I won't repeat phrases over and over again like I've been hearing complaints. Plus, we'll use entrance music and stuff like that, and it'll be a better production, I guarantee it.
Speaking of production, John.
All at the same price.
Yeah, all at the same price. By the way, the Dream Wars orders, I'm not taking any more, so those of you who have them, they are collector's items now, I guess. But speaking of production levels, I got a couple of comments on the production level of issue number 30, saying that it was the best issue as far as production-wise. Our voices were clear, and the tape speed was right on. But, that's a different story, John. Let's talk about Mark Lawrence. What the hell's going on with him? I don't understand this.
Well, it seems that Mark Lawrence is out of the wrestling business as an announcer. He has gone into the ministry. I can't picture Mark Lawrence into religion and being in the ministry, but if he's really got his heart set into it, I wish him all the best, because the ministry is, I'm religious, even though I cuss quite a bit, damn it. But I wish him all the best, but he never was much as an announcer, if you ask me. But I kind of just watched him just to hear him look stupid. you know, and even look and sound stupid. I watched the show just to see him.
I never liked the man, John, to tell you the truth, and he's the worst announcer to go down in the history of
Could be, might be, no.
No. How about this new announcer? Do you know anything about him?
Well, they've got this new announcer on KTVT Championship Sports, which is a 2-hour world-class, or USWA, wrestling program. He's a Clark Kent look-like. He's about like 6'6", and he towers over the wrestlers. He makes Kerry Von Erich look small, and the guy, but he's a geek. He's got glasses. He's got kind of dark brown hair, and he always wears suits. And he's taller than Mark Lawrence, and Mark Lawrence was fairly tall. Guy, he doesn't know his wrestling just doesn't know his wrestling.
All right, we'll have to see what develops out of that. Now, the Dirty White Boys, Alex Porto, I don't know what the deal is with him, but he is gone. They get a new Dirty White Boy, Jimmy Powell, who I mentioned on the last issue. He doesn't compliment Tony Anthony at all, John. What's going on here?
Well, supposedly, from what I've seen, Alex Porto was injured at the hands of Billy Joel Travis with the guitar, and he was out of action for some time because of the guitar incident where he was cracked over the skull. This left a void in the team where Ronnie Gossett recruited Jimmy Powell. Where the hell they got this guy, I have no idea. But he's about his arms are like 10 inches around diameter, and the guy is totally out of shape. He looks like a major prelim wrestler. And but he's got charisma. He comes off as kind of crazy, but he doesn't have the look to be a Dirty White Boy. But then they got rid of him, and then they brought Alex Porto back, and he was swearing revenge against Billy Joel Travis. But then the next time we saw them, Jimmy Powell was there again, so they're switching back and forth. I don't think they know what they want. Personally, my advice to them would be to get Lynn Denton, the original Dirty White Boy, the grappler, and bring him in as partner of Tony Anthony. These men have a lifelong friendship, and they're one heck of a team, and I think they could win some major titles out there, Jeff.
I think if they were in the area, I would give them the USWA World Tag Team titles, and possibly I think they'd have a great feud with Billy Joe Travis and Jeff Jarrett. But that's a different story, and I don't know what's going on here. I don't know if Porto's left the area or what, but he wasn't that bad of a Dirty White Boy.
No, he had the physique and the look. He looked like a younger Tony Anthony, and he was a former Dallas jobber where he's a beat-up boy. He beat up on television, but he made it to the team of the Dirty White Boys, and he wasn't half bad. He had some good moves. His flying leg drop, a la Bobby Eaton off top rope, was something to see. I don't know where he is, but get rid of this Powell guy, and I think now they've gotten rid of him. That Dirty White Boy Tony Anthony is by himself without a partner.
I don't know what's going on here, John. I don't know. All right, as promised, here's the interview with Jerry the King Lawler. With Jerry the King Lawler. Jerry, how have you been lately?
Well, I hopefully have been doing fine. I feel good, and matches have been going well, and everything's going okay, really.
I understand you've been wrestling for Joel Goodhart up in Philadelphia. Is there any chance of a merger going with the USWA and him?
Well, I don't think so. That was more along the lines of an independent sort of thing. Naturally, I wrestle most of the time for the USWA, but still, I'm also available for independent bookings. And Joel, of course, is a friend of mine, and he called me a while back about some matches. Any chance I have to help him out. It was a pleasure going up there. I mean, it was really a super promotion. I've wrestled on a few independent cards that haven't been all that well put together, and this was the first time I'd ever actually wrestled on one of Joel's promotions, and it was really a super card, a great crowd. Everything just went really well, so I was real pleased with it, and I think we're going to be doing another one on June the 6th up there in Philadelphia.
Sure. I heard your opponent's going to be Austin Idol. Is that true?
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be against Austin Idol. Most of the wrestling fans realize what kind of feud I've had in the past with Idol, and there one time he and Tommy Rich, a couple of guys that hospitalized me, and so any chance I get to get in the ring against Idol I always look forward to it. I had an incident that took place in just this past time when I wrestled up there, where Idol was kind of taking advantage of his opponent. So I went into the ring and I guess out of that's how this rematch stemmed from what took place in the aftermath of that match.
Have you had any offers from the NWA or WWF, or you try to stay away from those two?
Well, yeah, I know. I've never entertained any thoughts at all about going to the WWF. I mean, it's just like as far as I'm concerned, a big joke. The NWA. I've never really thought about going in there. I wish there was some sort of way that they could work more closely with some of the other organizations. But I think their problem now is that they're so obsessed with trying to emulate the WWF, and I think the best thing they could do is pretend the WWF doesn't even exist, which is what Vince McMahon does to them. Just pretend they don't even exist and go try to do the thing you can that'll do the best you can without trying to copy or without trying to better somebody else. Now I watch their shows and it's like they're going to be a bigger joke than the WWF with the RoboCop and stuff like that. It's like they got what's the guy's name, Hurd or whatever. They list him as the choreographer on the shows and stuff like that. It's like it's like I just think it's the fans' loss that the organizations no longer cooperate with each other. And that, once they sign these wrestlers into long-term contracts, there goes any movement between different parts of the countries by the wrestlers, and the fans are the ones who suffer in this. Now if you're a fan of no matter what organization you're a fan of, you're stuck with seeing the same wrestlers week in and week out, no matter how good they are. It gets old to the majority of the fans. It's the old thing: variety is the spice of life, and that goes for everything. The wrestling fans would rather see, no matter how much they like Ric Flair or the Four Horsemen or Lex Luger or Sting or whatever, when they see these guys week in and week out, it just gets old, And before, beforehand, the guys could go from one part of the country to the other and wrestle for different organizations, and it kept everything fresh. But now, if you look at the business in general, everything's just getting stale all over the country.
Is there any chances of any other wrestlers coming into the area? Any new talent coming in?
Well, where's it going to come from? I mean, that was one of the other things. That was one of the other things that used to take place. Guys could, when you say new wrestlers, it was somebody that was maybe wrestling in another part of the country that somebody hadn't seen here for a while, and if they would come in, they would be considered a new wrestler. But now, these guys are seen all over the place on cable television. Just a case in point, recently, the Rock and Roll Express, they had been featured in the NWA for years, and then when they left there, they came into this area and everybody said, "Oh, great, Rock and Roll Express, it's like a new wrestlers in the area." But they weren't new to the fans because the fans have been seeing them on cable TV week in and week out for the past years, and so it didn't mean anything. I mean, it wasn't like being fresh and new, and that's the problem that we're having all throughout the business part of the wrestling, or the wrestling in general.
Do you feel that cable TV has sort of ruined the attendance?
Well, cable TV certainly hasn't helped the attendance. I mean, but to be perfectly honest with you, I can't blame it on cable TV. I have to blame it on the wrestling promoters. They're the ones that are so greedy that they want their shows that they allow themselves to be overexposed and oversaturated. And when you saturate a market with something on television, I don't care if it's wrestling or if it's baseball or if it's football or boxing, no matter what it is, the people's appetite will eventually get satisfied. And that's what's happened. They've oversaturated the markets with wrestling. And so when somebody can sit home and if they've got cable could watch 30 or 40 hours a week of wrestling on television for free, why would they then pay $8 to $10 to go down and watch another 2 hours worth?
All right, I want to bring up a final point here. One of our listeners, Brian Tramel.
He's one of your listeners?
Yeah, he's one of our listeners. He said he had a run-in to you. I thought I'd give you a chance to tell your side of the story on this.
Well, I don't know if you would call it a run-in. In his case, it was more of a run-out. Brian Tramel, and I apparently he writes or has his own, what do you call it, a bulletin or a fan sheet or something like that, similar, I guess, maybe to the Wrestling Observer, which is the one that I think probably most fans are familiar with. But what happened, I was reading, somebody brought one of the Wrestling Observer yearbooks to my attention in Louisville, Kentucky one night. I was reading some articles that this Brian Tramel wrote, talking about how, the only thing that I cared about was what he said about me personally. I mean, he talked about how I was like the least or the most unimproved wrestler and that my work rate was bad or something like that. Anyway, what irks me is that the majority, or probably 99% of the people that hear this or that read those sheets have never seen Brian Tramel. Well, I know Brian Tramel personally because he comes to the matches every time we wrestle in Arkansas, in Jonesboro, Arkansas in particular. And Brian Tramel is a big, fat, unathletic looking slob, and so I guarantee the only thing athletic about this guy are his feet, because if you look at him, you would know in an instant that he has never played any type of sport, he has never participated in any type of competition, certainly not wrestling, and then for a big, fat, overbearing jerk like this to set himself up as a critic of somebody that's devoted their entire life to this profession, it kind of teased me off. And I brought him in the dressing room, and he came in the dressing room thinking everything was fine, and when he stood there, they closed the door, and I said, there were a couple other guys, there Jerry Calhoun, Randy Hales, and Big Lou Winston were standing there, and I said, guys, I want you to, I don't know if you can, I just want to tell you exactly what I said. I said, guys, I want you to look at this big fat piece of shit standing here. He thinks he can tell us who's a good wrestler or not. And as soon as I said that, Brian Tramel's eyes got about as big as saucers, and he broke and ran. That's why I called it, he said we had to run in. It was a run out. He tried to run out of the dressing room, and I was able to slam the door on his face and get his big fat body back into the dressing room. And I said, no, you're going to stand here and listen, because I want to hear what you got to say to me face to face instead of what you write in all of these sheets. I want you to say it to me face to face. Well, he never uttered one word because his lips started trembling, and he started crying like a big fat baby. And I just stood there, and I proceeded to tell him what I thought of him and these people who sit out there and have never competed in wrestling, don't know anything about wrestling other than what they've seen on television, and then they think that they have the know-it-all to call themselves critics and set themselves up to criticize and critique what I do and how I make my living, And of course, if that's what they want to if that's what they want to do, they can be like these fags Siskel and Ebert that are critics, movie critics or whatever. Maybe that's what they want to be, is wrestling critics. That's fine, but I just wanted to have the opportunity to tell him what I thought of him. Most of these guys, even like a David Meltzer, here's a jerk who wants to criticize somebody's work rate, and he thinks he thinks the only thing that is a good wrestling match is what he likes. Well, David Meltzer has never made one dime in the wrestling business, and I've made myself a millionaire. So obviously my work rate is pretty damn good, and obviously I know a little bit about what it takes to be successful in this business because I've been doing it for 19 years, and these jerks have been paying money to come see me do it. Well, I can just tell him that the guys that have made the most money in this profession are not the best wrestlers. They're the guys that have the best psychology, and they're the guys that know what the wrestling fans want to see, and the guys that know how to give it to them. And I'm one of those guys, and these guys, like David Meltzer and like Brian Tramel, are not the typical wrestling fans, and what they want to see is not what draws money. And let's face it, this is a business, and we're in this business to make money, just like everybody else is in business to make money. We're in this business to put as many people into these arenas as we possibly can and sell as many tickets. And what those guys think sells tickets is absolutely what does not sell tickets, and so I just thought that was my opportunity to set this jerk straight and tell him what I felt, and I did that. And like I said, I don't care what he writes in his book, I don't care what he writes in his sheets or what he says. I'm telling you the truth. The guy started crying like a baby and never said one word. I said, go ahead, speak, say this stuff to my face. He never uttered one word. Tears were running down his face, his lip was quivering. I finally opened the door and I said, get your fat ass out of here. And he ran like a coward out of the building. That's the last time I've seen Brian Tramel.
Okay, the comments from Jerry the King Lawler, and well, go ahead and turn the tape over to the other side.